Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand while I stepped away for the votes you just referenced, there's been additional questions about the stock buybacks, which I may have some follow-up on, as well as follow-up to the precision scheduled railroading that I know Senator Sanders, Senator Graham, among others, have raised. But let me actually ask a question of Ms. Shore. Let me just find my place here. In the spirit of holding polluters accountable. So we know what brings us here today is the incidents, plural now, in East Palestine, but I think we can all agree that we need to hold polluters accountable. And I have strong feelings about this personally, having dealt with the fallout of the federal government failing to hold companies accountable for environmental crimes and leaving communities holding the bag. So aside from the loosening of regulations, which we need to discuss and debate, part of the conversation for the rail incident in East Palestine, I want to bring attention to a case in my hometown of Los Angeles. Under the Trump administration, the EPA, your predecessors, the agency you're part of leading, along with the Department of Justice under the Trump administration, supported a bankruptcy plan that let the corporate polluter known as Exide evade criminal liability and responsibility to clean up decades of toxic dumping, and as a result left California taxpayers on the hook for the largest environmental cleanup in our state's history. So my question, Ms. Shore, is how will the EPA ensure that what happened during the Trump administration, what they inflicted on the Los Angeles communities surrounding the Exide plant, isn't repeated in East Palestine?
Thank you, Senator Padilla. On February 21st, EPA issued a unilateral administrative order. It's one of the most powerful enforcement tools that the agency has under the CERCLA, the Comprehensive Environmental Recovery, Compensation, and Liability Act, that will hold Norfolk Southern accountable to pay for all the costs of the cleanup and restoration in East Palestine. If the company doesn't comply with EPA's order, then EPA can step in, continue the work so there's no disruption in the essential cleanup, and assess 3 times the costs as penalties. It's a tool that EPA has used effectively in the past, and we will be vigorous about holding the company accountable.
Okay, thank you, because again, we saw what I would consider a worst case study, not a best case study, when these settlements completely leave polluters off the hook for the damage that they've taken. I know that was the prior administration. Policies have changed under the current administration. We're working to embed that environmental justice lens as well, not just at EPA, but within the Department of Justice, and hope to make it permanent. Want to come back to Mr. Shaw here for a few questions on, as it pertains to your workforce, inspections, and maintenance. You recently announced that Norfolk Southern would be deploying more wayside detection and hotbox detector technologies as part of the safety plan. And I apologize if this is a little bit redundant with the questions that have come up prior in the hearing, but I think I have some specifics I want to get to. From what I understand, the company has also reduced its workforce by nearly 40% since 2015. According to your own data reported to the Surface Transportation Board, the number of employees assigned to maintenance of equipment and stores has decreased by 60% over the past decade. Your data. Given what's happened, is Norfolk Southern now going to hire the additional signal workers necessary to maintain and inspect these systems that you're relying on to improve safety?
Yes, Senator, thank you for that question. The NTSB report was very clear that our hot box detectors were working as designed. We have taken it upon ourselves to install more hot box detectors as needed. Senator, I became CEO of Norfolk Southern 10 months ago. And Senator, ever since then, we've been on a hiring spree. We are aggressively hiring employees. Right now, our pipeline of conductor trainees is amongst the highest in our history. And I'm not going to stop.
So let me be specific. You say you're on a hiring spree. I want to be specific to the signal workers necessary to maintain and inspect the systems.
Senator, if we need to hire more signal workers to maintain and inspect the signals, we will absolutely do that.
Let me ask you this question. And I don't know if you've worked the line or at least walked the line, but how many sensors or length of track are assigned to each worker?
Senator, I don't have that specific information.
Do you know if workers are specifically dedicated to the inspection and maintenance of these technologies, or if it's just one on a long list of responsibilities they may have in the course of a day?
Senator, I don't know the specifics to that. I'm happy to get that information to you.
Well, let me tell you why I ask. According to the AFL-CIO's Transportation Trades Department, the amount of time carmen have to inspect each car in a train has been reduced by 2/3, from 3 minutes to now just 60 seconds per car. 60 seconds. Do you know how long it takes to walk the perimeter of a single car? You think 60 seconds is enough to not just walk the perimeter of that train car, but does that leave enough time for an actual thorough inspection? Because I can imagine that this gives us the confidence that carmen have the time to conduct that thorough inspection to identify or find any potential defects before the cars are sent back into service. So I know initial reviews and studies have said the sensors were or weren't working as you mentioned, but the investigation is not complete, right? NTSB is still doing some follow-up work. So sorry to drill down on a specific, but these specifics matter. And it's not just the technologies, it's the workforce necessary to install, to maintain, and to ensure that they're properly functioning. And to me, it just falls into the greater pattern that we've seen of the past decade. Workforce overall reducing, corporate compensations to stock buybacks on the upswing when the workforce that keeps the trains running and running safe is what's being compromised. I know my time is up. Thank you, Madam Chair.